I worked at a small bookstore in a quiet strip mall just off the highway. It was one of those independent places that managed to survive the digital takeover by being quaint, cozy, and just removed enough from the city to attract the right kind of loyal customers. The regulars were predictable: college students with too many tote bags, older couples with time to kill, and the occasional niche collector looking for something dusty and rare. I liked the quiet. I liked the order. The world outside could be chaos, but inside the bookstore, things made sense. Alphabetical rows, gentle lo-fi playing through the speakers, and the smell of coffee from the tiny in-store cafe we pretended was more than just a Keurig on a cart. Nothing ever really happened until him. He came in mid-February, when the air still bit and the days were short. I remember because it was a slow Thursday, and I had been restocking the non-fiction section when the door chime went off. I glanced up from the cart. He was average. That's what made it so strange later on, how someone so forgettable could take up so much space in my memory. Tall, ish, maybe 6'1", slender frame, not muscular, but not sickly either. Dark jeans, black coat, baseball cap, pulled low. Number. Distinguishing features, except maybe his eyes, gray, pale gray, like they'd been drained of warmth. He didn't smile, didn't greet me, just walked in and headed straight for the fiction shelves near the back. Nothing weird about that. What made me notice him was that he didn't browse. Not really. He stood still for a while, eyes scanning the titles, then picked one, a Stephen King paperback, The Dead Zone. He bought it at the counter. No small talk, just exact change and a curt nod before he walked out. He came back the next day. Same time, same quiet approach. Another King book. No greeting, no eye contact this time. Then again and again. For almost 2 weeks, he came in every day at exactly 3:37 p.m. I only know the time because I started watching the clock, wondering if he'd show. He never skipped, always bought a book. Never said more than a grunt or two, but he started watching me, not openly, not like a creep leering at you from behind a shelf. It was subtle. I'd be restocking or wiping counters and feel it, tightening in your chest, the hairs on your neck rising. I'd glance over and catch him looking, always, just for a second too long. I mentioned it to Sarah, my coworker, the only other full-timer at the store. She laughed it off. Maybe he's into you. It's the bookstore version of flirting. I didn't laugh. Something about his presence wasn't right. He didn't seem interested in me. He seemed aware, like he was waiting for something, watching for something to happen, like he already knew what came next and was just biding time. Then he stopped coming. A week passed. No 3:37 chime. No heavy boots on the old floorboards. I should have felt relieved, but instead, the silence made it worse. Every afternoon, I felt a phantom version of that dread creep in, expecting him. And then, nothing. The absence somehow louder than his presence ever was. Then, on a Thursday night, I was closing alone. Sarah had left early for a dentist appointment, and I was doing final checks, cash register, lights, lockup. The store was dark, except for the small lamp at the counter and the dim exit sign above the front door. I was in the back room grabbing my coat when I heard the front chime. I froze. We were closed. The lights were off. The door should have been locked. I peeked through the doorway toward the front. The door stood open, swaying slightly, bell still. jingling faintly from the motion. No one was there. I walked slowly to the entrance, heart thudding. I stepped outside, scanning the lot. Empty. The cold night air bit at my cheeks. I looked down. A faint trail of wet footprints led from the sidewalk to the doorway, then stopped. Just stopped. I locked the door and backed away. Slept with the lights on that night. The next day, Sarah told me I probably just forgot to lock the door, or the wind blew it open. But I knew I had locked it. He didn't come back during store hours, but I started seeing him elsewhere. Once on the bus, across the aisle, pretending to read. Another time, standing across the street from my apartment building, just out of the glow of the streetlight, never approaching, just watching. I filed a police report eventually. They were polite but unhelpful. Do you have any proof he's following you? No. Has he made any threats? No. Just stares, just silence, just presence. So I tried to move on, tried to reclaim my routine. But the tension never left. Then, late one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound, a light tapping, not loud, almost polite. It was coming from my living room window. I lived on the second floor. I froze in bed, barely breathing. The tapping stopped. Then a slow scrape, like a fingertip, dragged across the glass. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Eventually, I gathered enough courage to crawl out of bed and peek through my bedroom door. The living room window was dark. I couldn't see anything, but I could still feel it. That wrongness. I stayed like that until morning. The next day, I asked my landlord if he could check the exterior. Maybe a tree branch was loose, maybe an animal, something rational. He called back later, confused. There's no fire escape or balcony on that side, he said. Nothing anyone could stand on, and no marks on the siding. You sure it wasn't a dream? I wish it was. I stopped sleeping much after that. 2 weeks later, Sarah noticed something on the security footage. She was closing up and doing the camera check when she called me over. Did you come in early this morning? No. Why? She rewound the tape. It was from 5:12 a.m. The store was dark, closed, lights off, but the front door locked. I swear it clicked open. A figure walked in, slowly, confidently, not even checking if anyone was there. It was him. He walked straight to the fiction section, same spot as always, stood there for a full 7 minutes, then turned and stared directly at the camera. He smiled. Then he walked out. We called the police again. This time they took it a little more seriously. They checked the locks. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. They advised us to update our security system. That was it. I quit a week later. I couldn't take it anymore. The dreams, the waking nightmares, the sense that I was never alone. Even when I was alone, I moved back in with my parents 3 towns over. Got a job at a bigger chain bookstore, one with cameras and automatic locks and other people around at all times. I thought I was done with it, but last night I got a package. No return address. Inside was a book, The Dead Zone, and tucked inside the front cover, in neat handwriting. I never stopped watching. I stared at that book for a long time. The Dead Zone, same copy, same dog-eared corner. I remembered from months ago, like it was plucked from my memory and dropped onto my parents' kitchen table. I didn't tell them. What could I even say? They already thought I was being dramatic, overworked, paranoid. I checked the packaging again. Plain brown, no postage stamp, no delivery label. Someone had placed it there directly, hand-delivered, which meant they knew where I was. The rational part of me tried to explain it away. Maybe someone found it at the old store and thought it was mine. Maybe it was a coincidence. But the note inside said otherwise. I never stopped watching. I felt it again, that distinct cold that creeps beneath the skin, bypassing the logic centers of the brain. It doesn't care about explanations. It only knows danger. I dropped the book like it burned me. I didn't touch it again. My mom found it later that day and left it in my room, assuming it was something I wanted. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of the bedroom door. I didn't sleep. A few days passed. No more packages, no more sightings. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just suspended, like I was in the eye of a storm. I went to work, smiled at customers, tried to convince myself this was over. Then I started noticing small things, subtle but deliberate. The same customer at work, browsing the horror section every shift, never buying, never speaking, just standing. A missed call on my phone with no number, just unknown. Finding my bedroom window unlatched in the morning when I was sure I'd locked it. Once I swore I heard someone say my name from the woods behind my parents' house. Just once, faint, whispered. I stopped eating much. Sleep became a luxury. Even when I could fall asleep, I'd wake gasping, heart pounding, convinced someone was in the room with me. But there was never anyone there. I started walking with my keys between my fingers. I carried pepper spray. I changed my routines, doubled back on my roots. It didn't matter. The dread wasn't about where I went. It was the fact that he always seemed to be one step ahead. It didn't escalate all at once. There were no dramatic confrontations, no loud knock in the middle of the night, no chase scene. It was slower than that, more insidious. He wore me down over time. And then came the photo. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd finally convinced myself to go out for a walk alone, headphones in, trying to reclaim some piece of my life. When I got back, there was an envelope taped to the front door. No name. Inside was a single photograph. Me. Sleeping. In my bed. The angle showed my face turned slightly, arm dangling off the mattress. The lighting was low, just enough for a faint blue hue moonlight. There was no mistaking it. It was my room, my bed. From inside, there was no note, just the photo. I vomited. In the sink. In the sink. My dad called the police that time. I told them everything. I showed them the photo, the package, the times I'd seen him before. They opened a formal case, but you could tell they thought I was just another paranoid girl. No forced entry, no known suspect, no fingerprints, no proof beyond my word. Still, they agreed to send a patrol car by once a night. That lasted 4 nights. Then they stopped showing up. I didn't leave my room much after that. My parents started getting frustrated. My mom suggested therapy. My dad told me I couldn't live in fear forever. But they didn't understand. They didn't feel it. That crawling sensation under your skin, like you're being watched even through walls. The way the silence becomes too silent. The night everything shattered was a Friday, sometime after midnight. I woke up suddenly, not from a dream, not from a noise, just a jolt. Like my body sensed something before my mind did. The room was pitch black. I sat up slowly, and that's when I heard it. Very slow, but not mine. It was coming from the far corner of the room, behind the closet door. I froze. Every nerve screamed to run, to scream, but I stayed still, listening, my breath shallow, eyes straining in the dark. Then it stopped. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. When I finally reached for my phone with trembling fingers, I fumbled and dropped it on the floor with a loud clack. That's when the closet door creaked open. I didn't look. I couldn't. I leaped from the bed and sprinted out the door, down the hall, screaming for my dad. He came out groggy, confused. I sobbed and shook and pointed back toward the room. We searched it together. Nothing. No one. Closet empty. Window locked. But something was off. Subtle. The rug near the closet was slightly shifted. The corner lifted. Beneath it, nothing. No trap. Door. No crawl space. Just the faintest print of a boot. He'd been there. We called the police again. They took a report, promised to increase patrols, advised me to install cameras. I couldn't sleep there again. I couldn't even go back in the room. I slept on the couch in the living room for the next few nights. But even then, I felt exposed, vulnerable eventually. My parents insisted I go stay with my aunt across the state, somewhere new. Somewhere safe. I agreed. I had to. But the day before I left, I found something tucked inside my suitcase as I packed, a piece of paper. Folded once, on it was a hand-drawn floor plan of my aunt's house, marked in red ink, a single word scrawled beneath it. Soon. I don't know how he found out. I don't know how long he'd been inside, or how many times I didn't catch him watching me. The scariest part wasn't the photo, or the note, or even the breathing in the room. It was the quiet, how he never said a word, how he never had to, how he took up space in my life and my mind without ever needing to break in with violence, because he didn't need to, he just needed me to. No, he could. And he still could. Even now, sometimes, I think I see someone watching from across the street. A figure in a dark coat, gray eyes, just standing, waiting. I changed cities, changed numbers, changed everything. But there are some things you can't outrun. He never wanted to hurt me. He just wanted to watch. And I think he still is. This started just under a year ago, and I still don't really know how to talk about it. I haven't told my parents, my coworkers, or even my closest friend. Not because I don't trust them, but because I don't think they'd believe me. Or worse, they'd do that thing people do when they don't want to believe something awful. They'd smile tightly, nod too much, and quietly decide I was being paranoid. But I know what happened. I know what's still happening. It started shortly after I moved into my apartment. I was 26, living alone for the first time. I'd spent years with roommates, some decent, some barely tolerable, but I was finally making enough money to rent a small one-bedroom unit in a brownstone-style building on the edge of the city. It wasn't glamorous. Old creaky floors, a faint, musty smell that no amount of candles could fix, and a fuse box that blew every time I used the microwave and the toaster at the same time. But it was mine, quiet, cheap, and just far enough from downtown that I could breathe. The building had 5 units total. Mine was on the 2nd floor. Directly above me was Unit 5, a 3rd-floor apartment that I was told by the landlord was technically occupied, but rarely used. Some older man, apparently, who kept it for storage and visits to the city. So, for the first 2 months, I never heard a thing from upstairs. No footsteps, no music, no plumbing. It was like living beneath a ghost, until one night early April, I think I was jolted awake by a noise, a loud, dragging scrape directly above my bed. It sounded like furniture being shoved across hardwood. Slow, heavy, intentional. Not an accident. Not someone bumping into a table. This was deliberate. A push, a pause, another push. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. It was around 2:40 a.m. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The building was old. Maybe it was pipes, maybe a heating duct, maybe rats in the walls. But then it happened again the next night. Same time, same sound, that dragging scrape, followed by 3 measured footsteps, and then silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I asked my landlord the next day if anyone had moved into the unit upstairs. He gave me this kind of absent-minded shrug and said no. Old Mr. Hatley still owns it, he told me. But he hasn't been in town for months. That place has been locked up tight. I wanted to believe him, but the noises continued. Always late, always between 2:30 and 3 a.m. Never a voice, never any lights turning on, just that sound, something heavy moving directly above my bed. It became a kind of sick routine. I'd lie awake every night, staring at the ceiling, waiting, dreading. It wouldn't always happen, but when it did, it followed the same pattern: scrape, pause, footsteps, then nothing. Just an oppressive silence that felt like it was watching me. I started leaving the light on. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. I even tried sleeping with headphones in, blasting white noise, but it didn't matter. Somehow I still felt it when it happened, like it had carved a groove in my awareness, and no sound or distraction could fill it. It wasn't until early May that things escalated. I had just gotten back from work, arms full of groceries, when I found something at my front door. A piece of paper, folded once, no envelope, no writing on the outside. I opened it and immediately felt my chest tighten. Inside was a crude, hand-drawn sketch of my apartment's layout. Nothing professional, just pencil lines and basic shapes, but it was accurate, down to the placement of my couch, my bed, even my desk lamp. There was only one thing added that didn't belong: a small black X drawn in the upper corner of my bedroom. I stared at it for a long time. That corner was directly across from my bed, the same corner I kept thinking someone was standing in every night, even though I never saw anyone. I called the landlord again. I told him about the noises, the drawing, everything. He sounded annoyed, told me I was probably freaking myself out, and that Mr. Hatley's never even set foot in your unit. He offered to come check the upstairs apartment that weekend, if it would make me feel better. I agreed. He never showed, and the following night I woke up to something worse than scraping or footsteps: breathing. It was faint, but it was there, low, slow, steady breathing coming from the ceiling. I could hear it through the drywall, right above my head. It didn't move. It didn't speak. Just breathed, like someone was lying flat across the floorboards upstairs, directly in line with my bed, nose nearly touching the floor, listening. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called the police. They came, 2 uniformed officers. They were polite, but it was clear they didn't take it seriously. They did a walkthrough, checked my apartment, then went up to the 3rd floor. The landlord had to come let them in. He acted annoyed the entire time. They came back down 10 minutes later and told me they found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No one hiding up there. It's just a dusty apartment with a few chairs and boxes. I asked if they checked the closet. They gave me a look. There isn't a closet, one of them said. Just a coat rack by the door. The rest is open space. But that didn't make sense. There should have been a closet. It was in the same place as mine, small, narrow, right near the far end of the bedroom. I knew that layout. I lived under it, but they insisted. No closet. I didn't know what to say. I didn't sleep the next night either. By the end of that week, I was barely holding it together. I called off work. I barely ate. I didn't leave the apartment unless it was for food or coffee, and even then, I rushed back, scared that something would be waiting for me. And then it stopped. No more noises, no footsteps, no dragging, nothing. A week passed, then two. I started sleeping again, cautiously. My appetite came back. I even went out for drinks with a friend. Things felt normal, almost, until the package arrived. The package was small, wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with twine, like something from a different decade. No label, no return address, no stamps. It was sitting neatly outside my door when I got back from the corner store, resting in the center of the welcome mat, like someone had measured the placement. I looked down at it for a long time before picking it up. Something about it felt ... wrong. Too deliberate, too intimate. It was light. No sound when I shook it. I took it inside and opened it on the kitchen table. Remember frantically searching for them one morning in late March, tearing through drawers and bags before giving up and buying new ones. I thought I must have left them on the bus or lost them at work. But here they were, in a box delivered to my door. I dropped them instantly and backed away from the table, bile rising in my throat. I hadn't just lost them, they'd been taken. Night. I dragged my mattress into the living room and slept with the lights on. My bedroom stayed dark, the door closed. I didn't care if it seemed irrational. I didn't want to be under that ceiling. Not anymore. The next morning, I filed a second police report. I showed them the package, the earbuds. I explained everything. Again, they took notes, promised to follow up, advised me to stay with a friend if I felt unsafe. But there's only so many times you can go to the authorities before they start treating you like a nuisance. Like maybe you're the problem. So I stopped calling. Instead, I bought door wedges, installed a cheap security camera inside my apartment, aimed at the hallway, downloaded a motion detection app, started recording everything, and for a while, nothing happened. No late night noises, no packages, no breathing. Weeks passed. I went back to sleeping in my bed again, though never without double-checking every lock and bolt. My anxiety never really left, but it receded just enough to let me function again until mid-June. I had just gotten out of the shower when I noticed it. A wet footprint on the tile floor, not mine, too large, pointed in the wrong direction, toward the bathroom, not away. I froze. I hadn't heard anything. My front door was locked. No windows were open. I was alone. I slowly crept through the apartment, clutching a metal flashlight. I checked every room, every closet, every cabinet, slowly fading as the water dried. I watched the security footage for that morning. At 6:17 a.m., the feed glitched for exactly 7 seconds, just long enough for something or someone to pass through unseen. I started leaving the TV on at night, not for the light or the sound. But so, if he was watching, he'd have something else to look at. Something other than me. It made sense in my sleep-deprived mind. I started having dreams. Sometimes they were just darkness and breathing. Other times I dreamed I was locked in my apartment, unable to scream, as someone paced overhead, dragging something heavy. In one dream, I woke up to find the ceiling gone, replaced by a massive eye staring down at me, unblinking. I stopped trying to separate the dreams from reality. Then, one night, I received a voicemail. No caller ID, just a single recording. 32 seconds long. It was silent for the first 10 seconds. Then, a low, slow creak, like a floorboard, under shifting weight. Then, my own voice, faint, muffled, hello. Then, breathing, same pattern I'd heard above me for months. Same, slow, inhale, exhale, dot. The message ended without a word. I saved it, played it for the police. They said it must have been a prank. A recording spliced together, probably someone I knew playing a joke. Have you been in any recent arguments with friends? I stopped going to them after that. I started sleeping during the day, staying up all night, crouched on my living room floor with a flashlight and kitchen knife, listening, waiting. I never heard him enter. I never saw his face, but he was always one step ahead. At one point, I covered my ceiling with sticky notes that read, "You don't belong here. I see you. Get out." They were for him. I wanted him to know I knew. I wanted to make him feel watched. But a few nights later, they were gone. Every single note peeled off and placed in a neat stack on my kitchen counter. Nothing else was touched. That was the night I stopped sleeping altogether. I called in sick to work. I let dishes pile up. I stopped changing clothes. My friends stopped checking in. Eventually, I stopped leaving the apartment at all. I became a ghost. Until one morning in late July, I woke to sunlight on my face and the sound of someone walking above me again. But this time, it was different. There was a rhythm to it. Not footsteps, pacing, fast, hard, back and forth, heavy boots hitting the floor like a metronome of madness. It didn't stop. It didn't change. Just walked. 5 hours. I sat beneath it, knees pulled to my chest, shaking. At one point, I screamed. I yelled at the ceiling, cursing and pleading. Slept at a gas station. Kept driving. I found a cheap motel in a small town 6 hours away. I paid cash. Used a fake name that was 4 months ago. I've been here ever since. I haven't gone back to the apartment. I haven't contacted the landlord. It happened again. I woke up at 2:40 a.m. No noises. No footsteps, but something felt off. I got out of bed and walked to the window. There, across the street, beneath a flickering motel sign, I could see what he was holding, a plain, white sticky note. He held it up slowly. There was one word written in thick black marker, upstairs. I didn't think much of her the first time I saw her. It was raining, and I was standing under the cracked plexiglass cover of the bus stop on 6th and Elridge, just outside the city. It was late, past 10 p.m., and the streets were mostly empty, the kind of quiet that feels thin, like it could snap if someone spoke too loud. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on the far end of the bench, hood up, head down, so still I thought she might be asleep. I gave the usual polite nod when I sat, but she didn't move, didn't even blink. I figured maybe she was high, or coming down from something. This wasn't the nicest neighborhood. Not dangerous exactly, just tired and worn out in a way that made people disappear into themselves. The bus came. She didn't get on. I hesitated, just sat there, motionless. I got on, told myself it was none of my business. It happened again 2 days later. Same stop, same bench, same time, same girl. This time, she was facing forward, eyes wide open, staring across the street like she was watching something I couldn't see. Her face was pale, not just light-skinned, but drained, like color had been pulled out of her. Lips slightly parted, eyes glassy. I said, "You okay?" She didn't get on. I rode in silence, a cold knot twisting in my stomach. By the third time, I wasn't sure if it was coincidence or something else. I stopped pretending I didn't notice. I watched her out of the corner of my eye the whole time I waited. She was still, perfectly still. But then, just for a second. Then they slid back to the street like nothing happened. I boarded the bus without a word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in my head, that brief flick of recognition, like she knew me, like I'd passed some kind of invisible threshold without realizing it. By the fourth time, I considered walking to a different stop. I didn't. I sat at the bench again. She was already there, waiting. But this time, something was different. She was smiling, not a warm smile, not shy or nervous. It was small, closed-lipped, fixed. I didn't sit down. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice even. "Do you need help? Are you waiting for someone?" The door and pulled the curtains. Tried to shake the feeling I'd just done something wrong, like I'd made a choice I couldn't undo. I didn't take the bus the rest of the week, but she followed me anyway. The first time I knew for sure she was following me was 3 days after I stopped riding the bus. It was a Saturday night, cold, dry air. I'd just gotten back from my buddy's place. We'd been watching a game, drinking cheap beer. I was half buzzed, walking down my street with one headphone in, trying to convince myself that everything lately had just been in my head. Then I saw her, standing under the streetlight, 2 blocks from my building. Not at a bus stop. Not moving, just standing. Same hood pulled low, same pale face, same unnatural stillness. My throat went dry. I kept walking, heart pounding, trying not to look directly at her. I pulled my keys out early, tried to stay casual. I made it to my building, went up the stairs, 2 at a time, slammed the door shut behind me and locked every bolt. Then I shut the curtains and turned off all the lights. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, holding my phone, staring at the front door. She never knocked, but I knew she'd been there. The next morning, I found a smudge on the front window. It looked like a handprint. For weeks, things got worse. I started seeing her everywhere, always from a distance, always just close enough to be unmistakable, but never near enough to confront. I spotted her standing at the edge of parking lots, sitting in the back of the diner I went to for breakfast. Once, I saw her reflection in the mirror of a convenience store behind me. But when I turned, she wasn't there. It wasn't just that she was showing up. It was how she showed up. She never spoke, never moved toward me, just watched. And every time she was smiling, that same expression, calm, thin-lipped, like she knew something I didn't. I told a few friends. I tried to explain. They joked that I had a secret admirer, told me I should be flattered. I wasn't. One night, I came home to find a Polaroid taped to my front door. It was a picture of me sleeping, taken from the side of the bed, no more than 3 feet away. The angle, it was close, personal. I checked the locks. They were still secure. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. Nothing out of place, except for that photo. I called the cops. They came, looked around, took the photo, and told me to stay alert. That was it. They didn't understand. This wasn't some crazed ex or a burglar. It was something deeper, quieter. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to become part of my life. I started keeping all the lights on at night, slept with the TV blaring. I kept my shoes on in bed. I barely ate. Every day felt like I was slowly being smothered by someone who never touched me, someone who was always watching but never approached. Then came the voice messages, blocked numbers, all empty at first, just silence or faint static. Then breathing. Then, once, and I swear this is true, I heard myself, my own voice, saying, "Please, leave me alone." Except I'd never said that, not out loud, not to her. I changed my phone number. She kept calling anyway. In mid-October, I finally broke down and bought a one-way train ticket out of the city. Didn't tell anyone, just packed a bag and left. I didn't know where I was going, just that it needed to be away. I ended up in a small town 3 states over, found a cheap room above a bakery, and paid 2 months' rent in cash for it. While things were better, I didn't see her anymore. I got a job, stocking at a warehouse, started to feel human again. But that kind of peace never lasts. A few nights ago, I came home from my shift and found something slipped under the door. A bus ticket. The same route I used to take, same stop. Same time. On the back, in delicate, neat handwriting, "You forgot me. I haven't slept since. I keep waiting to see her outside my building. But she never shows. I think she's already inside." I hear the faint creak of the floorboards behind the walls. Sometimes I catch a whiff of her, that faint scent of old perfume like lilacs, and something sweet and sour underneath. Sometimes I hear humming in the pipes. I thought about calling the cops again. But how do you explain that someone has followed your life? That she isn't trying to kill you, she's trying to insert herself into your routine like a shadow. How do you explain that the horror isn't what she do, it's what she won't do? She won't knock, she won't ask, she'll just be there eventually. You stop questioning it, you stop resisting, you make space. Sometimes I sit by the window now and look out at nothing in particular, the way she used to. Sometimes I catch myself smiling the way she smiled. I think she's still here, and the truth, I think I miss her when she's not. This happened about 5 years ago when I was 26, during one of the lowest points of my life. I'd just gone through a bad breakup. My long-term girlfriend had left me unexpectedly, and it completely knocked the wind out of me. I lost my job a few months later and had to move out of the apartment we'd shared together. With barely any savings, I had no choice but to take whatever living arrangement I could afford. That's how I ended up renting a room in a 3-bedroom house shared by 2 other people. One of them, a guy named Marcus. He seemed normal at first, in fact. He was barely around. The day I moved in, he introduced himself quickly, shook my hand, and said he mostly worked nights doing freelance tech stuff. I barely saw him. The other roommate was a woman named Chloe, quiet but friendly. And we bonded quickly over the mutual awkwardness of living with strangers. But even from the start, I noticed something a little off about Marcus. It was the way he moved around the house, always soft-footed, deliberately quiet, like he didn't want to be heard, like he was listening. I chalked it up to him being introverted or just respectful of our space. I didn't want to project my unease. I had enough going on with my depression and the feeling of starting over in a place that didn't feel like home. But then the small things started. It started with my door. I'd wake up in the morning and it would be open. Not wide open, just slightly cracked. Enough to make me question myself. I'd tell myself I must have forgotten to close it the night before, but it kept happening, even after I began double-checking before bed. Once, I locked it from the inside and placed a small piece of tape over the latch as a test. When I woke up, the door was open again, and the tape was gone. I confronted Chloe first, just to feel things out. I asked if she'd ever noticed anything weird. Doors opening, stuff moving, anything. She gave me this tired look and said, "You mean Marcus?" Something in her voice told me she already knew what I was going to say. She told me that she'd once come home early and found Marcus standing in her room. He claimed he was looking for his phone, but he didn't even own the same phone model she had. He left without apologizing. After that, she started locking her door, too. The thing was, Marcus never did anything provably threatening, just enough to unsettle you. His glances lingered too long. He moved soundlessly through the halls. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and swear I heard footsteps just outside my door. At one point, Chloe and I even joked, in that nervous way people do, that he might have hidden cameras somewhere in the house, but neither of us ever found any, until I did. I found the camera by accident. It was a Wednesday night, just after midnight. I was getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth in the shared bathroom, when I dropped my toothbrush. It rolled under the sink cabinet just out of reach. I got on my knees, opened the cabinet, and there it was, a tiny black lens tucked behind the plumbing, hidden behind a bundle of old washcloths. At first, I thought it was a motion sensor or some kind of leak detector. But when I pulled it out and followed the cord, I realized it was wired, feeding somewhere through the wall. That's when I started shaking. It wasn't plugged into anything in the bathroom. Someone had threaded it through a hole in the drywall behind the sink. And someone had placed it specifically to face up toward the mirror, toward anyone standing at the sink. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my room, staring at the wall, imagining Marcus on the other side with headphones on, watching, listening. Chloe didn't answer when I knocked on her door at 2 a.m., but the next morning, her aside and showed her the camera. She didn't even look surprised. She just whispered, "We need to get out of here." But we didn't. Not right away. Because when we went to the landlord the next day, a gruff older guy who owned half the block, he told us Marcus had been there longer than either of us. "He always pays on time," the landlord said. "Never caused any trouble. Maybe you kids just need to learn to mind your business." Chloe and I both gave our 30-day notices that week. We started sleeping with our doors locked and heavy furniture pushed against them. We kept our phones charged and keys on hand at all times, but it didn't stop the feeling that we weren't alone. Sometimes, I'd catch Marcus staring at me through the reflection in the microwave door. Or I'd hear him talking in low whispers at night, except there was no one else in his room. Once I went to heat something in the oven and found a burnt CD on the middle rack, written on it, in neat black Sharpie, "You looked good last night." Then Chloe disappeared. It was a Thursday morning. I'd woken up late for work and didn't see her at breakfast. Not unusual. She had morning shifts sometimes, but by that evening, I still hadn't heard from her. I texted, called, nothing. Her door was open. The room was spotless, like she'd moved out, but only part of her stuff was gone. Half her clothes were still in the closet. Her favorite coffee mug was still in the sink. Her laptop was on the desk. Her phone was on the floor, face down, under the edge of the bed. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to call the police. I almost did, but then I remembered. Marcus worked in tech. He was always fiddling with phones, laptops, wires, and now she was gone. I didn't sleep again after that. Every night, I pushed a dresser against my door and wedged a chair under the knob. Every sound in the hallway felt like footsteps. Every creak of the floorboards felt deliberate. I started seeing shadows under the door, soft, slow-moving, as though someone stood outside for minutes at a time, just watching. Then, one night, I woke up to something cold on my cheek. It was dark, pitch black. The power was out, and someone had opened my door. I reached for my phone. It wasn't there. I reached for the lamp. Nothing. Then I heard the breath, right next to me, hot and humid. I lunged for the edge of the bed and ran, slammed the door behind me, sprinted into the hallway, out the front door, barefoot. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away. I didn't go back for 2 days. When I finally returned with a friend and a cop, the house was empty. Marcus was gone. So was Chloe's laptop and phone. My phone had been left under the couch, battery dead. The CD in the oven was gone. Even the tiny camera behind the bathroom sink had been ripped out. The cop said there was no sign of forced entry or struggle. My door had been unlocked from the inside. They treated it like a roommate dispute, said Chloe had probably left willingly, that Marcus had just moved on, that maybe I'd had a mental break from stress. They didn't file a report. No arrests, no searches, just a shrug. I never saw Chloe again. 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a plain envelope with a small SD card inside. I plugged it into my computer. There were only 2 files. The first was a grainy video of me sleeping, taken from what looked like a hidden camera on my bookshelf. I rolled over at one point, and the lens shifted slightly. The timestamp said it was from the night the power had gone out. The second file was a voice recording, a whisper, slow, rhythmic breathing. Then, he's still with you. Then static. Sometimes, late at night, I feel like someone's watching me again, even in my new place, with new locks, new neighbors, a security system, and a dog. It's a feeling that never left. And I still check my mirrors for hidden lenses, because I don't think Marcus was ever really just Marcus. I think he was something worse, someone who knew exactly how to get inside someone's life without leaving a trace, someone who knows how to erase people, someone who knows how to wait. And now I wait too. I wait for the moment I see him again, because I know he will. They always do. I work in social media moderation. It's not a glamorous, job. I basically sit in front of a screen for 10 hours a day, flagging abusive content, filtering harassment, and reviewing user reports for a mid-sized app most people haven't even heard of. It's mentally exhausting. You start to realize how ugly people can get when they think there are no consequences, no identity, no accountability. After a few years, it gets to you. You stop believing in the good of people. You stop trusting strangers. But this story isn't about a user band or some unhinged message thread. This is about a man I never approved. A man who somehow found me anyway. It started about 8 months ago. I was doing an overnight shift, the kind where it's just you, a thermos of cold coffee, and 6 hours of pornographic usernames and bot spam. Most of the reports were dull or mind-numbing, but one came in with a red flag, a level 3 abuse marker. Those are rare. They usually involve threats of violence or graphic harassment. The report was tied to a newly created user, Mr. Observer 91. The flagged post was a message. You look better with the lights off, don't you think? It was creepy, but I'd seen worse. Still, I had to investigate the account. I clicked into the user's profile and got chills. There were no pictures, no posts, just a bio. I've been watching since you got that blue coffee mug, the chipped one with the faded NASA logo. I looked down at my desk. I hadn't even realized I was holding that mug in my hand. Now, I know what you're thinking. Coincidence, right? Lucky guess. Or maybe someone at the office messing with me. But I work remotely. I was home, alone, in my studio apartment, and that mug, I bought it at a thrift shop 2 towns over. I don't even remember ever taking a picture with it. I showed the message to my supervisor. They disabled the account, flagged the IP, and logged the incident. They told me it was probably someone who found an old post of mine online, maybe an old Facebook photo I forgot to privatize. But something about the account stuck with me. I couldn't shake the way the words felt too specific, like someone had written them while watching me in real-time. Later that night, just before logging off, I checked my WEBCAM. It was on. The green light flickered for just a second before going dark. I put tape over the lens the next morning. I ran every malware scanner I could find, changed all my passwords, factory reset my phone. It didn't matter, because a week later, another report came in. Same format, same style, a new username. This time, WindowFriend91. The message was simple. That gray hoodie doesn't fit you anymore. You've gained weight. I hadn't worn that hoodie in months, but I had just put it on that night for the first time since winter. I hadn't posted a picture. I hadn't told anyone. I stood up and turned around, scanning my tiny apartment. Every shadow felt deliberate. Every corner felt wrong. And then I saw it, my full-length mirror, an old thing I'd dragged in from my parents' house, had a small glint near the top, something tiny, embedded, almost invisible. I grabbed a knife and pried it out, a pinhole camera. It had been in my apartment the whole time. The police didn't help. I filed a report, told them everything. They said there was no sign of forced entry, no evidence the footage had been uploaded anywhere. Their best guess was that someone installed it before I moved in, but I'd lived in that apartment for 3 years. No, it was new construction. The implication made me sick. Someone had come into my home after I moved in and planted it. I left the apartment within a week. moved in with my brother across town. He thought I was overreacting. Said I'd been working too much, reading too many creepypastas and Reddit threads. But then he got a package, no return address, just a USB drive. He plugged it into his laptop and found a single folder inside. She Doesn't Sleep. Hundreds of short video clips. All of me, at night, tossing, turning, sitting up suddenly, looking into the dark. Every video was labeled by date and time. Some were filmed from inside my room. Some were screenshots of me moderating content. Facial expressions I'd never seen. Angles I didn't recognize. Someone had been screen capturing me, watching me work, sleep, live, and worst of all, there were recent clips taken from my brother's guest bedroom. I've destroyed my laptop. I deleted every online account I had. I changed my name on everything, utilities, subscriptions, voter registration, and I still wasn't safe because the messages never stopped. They stopped appearing in my moderation queue, sure, but they started showing up elsewhere. On sticky notes, inside books I borrowed from the library, on the receipt at a restaurant I'd never been to before, scrawled on the bathroom mirror of a bar I visited on a whim with friends miles from home. I liked your hair better when it was longer. You're not as clever as you think. You still check the windows at night. Good. I live completely off the grid now. No social media, no smartphone. I use cash. No GPS. I even moved to a different state under a different name. But I still don't feel alone. Sometimes I find things in my mailbox, drawings of my face, notes that reference things I've never said out loud, and one time I woke up to a sound outside the window. When I looked, my own reflection staring back at me, and behind it, a figure disappearing into the tree line. I know people won't believe this, but something found me through the screen, and once it did, it never let go. You think you're safe when you log off, but they're not following your profile. They're following you.